Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our entitled parents. In today's episode, EM pushes me in my wheelchair away from my family. Stepmom asks about my tattoo, then makes it about herself. Mom demanded I pay kids for shoveling. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. EM pushes me in my wheelchair away from my family. A few years ago I was living in Vegas and an EM literally wheeled me away from my family. I have a number of health issues, and after a few botched surgeries and neurological damage I was bedridden. I never left my house/bed except for doctor appointments. I hadn't been out at all for 2.5 years. I had worked really hard on my daily physical therapy and my balance had greatly improved. My family came out for a visit. My husband was stationed at Nellis AFB, and I was so excited to surprise them with my improvements. I could stand and walk and was actually wearing pants. To celebrate, I wanted to go see the fountains at the Bellagio. For most people this is a nice outing, but for me this was years in the making. I was nervous I might get overtired and lost in the fast-moving crowd, so we had to bring my wheelchair. We knew the schedule for the fountains and arrived super early to secure a spot in front where I could see from my chair. It was such an important moment for all of us. We lined up by the fence, and no sooner did the show start I felt this jerking on my wheelchair. I thought maybe someone had tripped on me and I immediately looked up to apologize. I was pretty self-conscious and ashamed of being out in a wheelchair in such a big crowd. When I glanced up to apologize, I see this woman with a small child on her hip using one hand to literally pull me away from the fence. Because she was only using one hand, she spun me completely around to face the street. I was stunned. I could hear everyone reacting to the fountain show, and here I was looking dumb awkwardly facing a bunch of strangers. I yelled for my husband, but he couldn't hear me over the noise. I looked behind me and this woman had plopped her child up onto the guardrail. Never made eye contact with me, never said one word to me, and had treated me like a piece of luggage. I tried to stand up, but the people around me had crowded me so much I didn't have room to push my chair back enough. I desperately looked around at the strangers in front of me, hoping someone who had seen what happened would help. It then dawned on me that this was a huge family/friend group. They all began nudging me aside, further and further away from my family. It all happened so fast. I found myself pushed into the walking area where people who weren't stopping to watch the fountain show were quickly trying to walk past. People couldn't see me through the crowd and were stumbling over/past me. I couldn't see my family anymore and was trying hard to push myself up out of my chair the way my physical therapist had taught me. I feel someone grabbing my chair again and I panicked. I start yelling, "No, please. No." And then realized it was my husband. He had glanced to check on me and to take a picture of me being out for the first time, and I was gone. He had to fight his way through the crowd, the same family group, to find me. I burst into tears. I don't know why, but it was like all the trauma from the last few years hit me all at once. I told him they had pushed me away. And after putting it together, my husband was pissed. He turned to this group of people and demanded to know who had pushed me away. By this time the fountain show was pretty much over. The group initially just ignored my husband like they had me, until I pointed out the woman with her child as the culprits. My family confronted her, nicely I might add, and tried to explain why a wheelchair is an extension of a person, etc. She at first pretended like she didn't speak English. But I had heard them talking amongst themselves in English while they pushed me into the walking area, and I told my husband as much. She then gave up that act and told my family about how I was in their way and probably couldn't see anyway, and the man with her claimed, in a raised voice, that in their country they don't take their shameful family members out in public. To which my husband responded, "If that were true, none of you would be here." I was maybe even more shocked by his last sentence than being wheeled away. I managed the courage to tell him that what he said was bullshit and that I'm sure people in your country are actually kind and would be proud if I was their daughter. I remember the exact words I said because later I was very proud that I stood up to them. The group sort of collectively scoffed, spoke to one another quickly in what I think was Hindi, and slowly walked away as if nothing happened. We didn't stay for the next show because I just wanted to go home. I don't know which is worse, pushing a disabled person in a wheelchair out of your way or wrongly painting your countrymen as prejudice. I'm so sorry this happened to you. That is disgusting behavior and I hope the karma follows them. Thanks. To this day it seems unbelievable. This. And kudos to your hubby for taking up for you. That is awful behavior to exhibit towards a disabled person. Would it have helped if you had been in possession of an alert device like a whistle? I ask because I recently got diagnosed with POTS and was born with arthrogryposis, so one of my biggest fears is falling somewhere noisy and being unable to attract help. That's a great idea. I never thought of that for in public. I had a baby monitor in my room at home. I'm sure one of those rape whistles would have helped. We just never thought that this would happen. I was right next to my husband. I think you should get one and a medical bracelet in case you pass out somewhere. A similar experience happened to my sister. She was wheeling up a ramp at her university when suddenly this guy behind her grabbed her chair roughly and pushed her up the rest of the way. He then pushed her out of his way and kept walking. Didn't say a word to her, and my sister was just in a state of shock. Apparently she was going to slow for him on the wheelchair ramp, so he took matters into his own hands. He must feel like he's too good for the stairs. I still don't understand how people think it's okay to treat disabled people this way, like they are no more than an object in their way. Stepmom asks about my tattoo, then makes it about herself. Necessary background: I, 35F, lost my biological mom to drowning when I was 5. My dad raised me and my sister solo for years but remarried when I was 12 or 13. Stepmom, now 58, was verbally abusive, jealous of my relationship with my dad, and jealous of my closeness with any family members on my mom or dad's side. She also hated that I refused to let her adopt me. I just never saw her as a true mom. I didn't think she liked me. She scared me more than making me feel safe or happy, and she showed blatant favoritism to her bio son because he could just run to his dad if he doesn't like it. You're stuck here. Anyway, my dad died of lung cancer in 2010. I stayed in touch with my stepmom because I genuinely love my stepbrother and his wife and kids. I am very low contact. My sister is no contact with stepmom. I held off seeing her for years by using COVID, but finally ran out of excuses and she came to visit after Christmas for a long weekend. As she had not seen me in person in a few years, she noticed the new tattoo I had. It's 3 simple line drawings, one of a tree, one of crystals, and one of a robot. She asked what they meant and I said, well, the tree is for my mom, since one of the few memories I have of her is when she taught me to climb a tree in our yard. The crystals are for Dad because he was a geophysicist and a rock collector and loved to dig for quartz crystals in Arkansas, and the robot is for my nephew, my cousin's son, who died when he was 6. He had drawn me the robot one of the last times I saw him. She paused and sat back and then responded, so, God forbid, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, what would you get for me? I was so hurt, but also not surprised. She's made comments before to the tune of, do I have to die to get you to appreciate me, so it wasn't totally out of the blue. But it made me so sad that there was absolutely no empathy, no compassion. It was all, well, what about me? Don't I deserve a memorial? Ugh. Dear Lord, forgive me, but I instantly thought with that attitude, a bus. The plate number of the bus. My first thought was to say a mirror because she's relatively narcissistic, but a bus would have been much better. Some ideas come to mind. A smiley face? Celebratory fireworks? The Wizard of Oz scene with the witch's legs sticking out from under the house? Stick figure dancing a jig? Tell her your tattoo for her will be a potato on the bottom of your foot and then refuse to answer any further questions about it. It will confuse the heck out of her and drive her crazy. Question: why let her stay with you for any reason? You don't need her in your life to have a relaxing with your stepbrother. Mom demanded I pay kids for shoveling. Hello. I am one of the many in the Midwest hit by the snowpocalypse. I think we got like 14 inches where I live. I also want to preface this with I don't like kids. I don't hate them, I just don't have any experience with kids and haven't felt the need to produce any of my own. 26F. I work from home and received a knock at my door today. There was a group of like 4 12-year-oldish boys, and they had shoveled my driveway and sidewalk and were now requesting payment. They expected $15 each. I was really confused because they never knocked to ask if they could shovel my driveway. They just did it without asking and were expecting to be paid. I was really just dumbstruck and kind of said I don't have any cash, and one of them pulled up a smartphone saying they had their mom's Venmo account. Again, me just being extremely confused, I started saying that I never agreed to pay them for anything. I was going to shovel my driveway at lunchtime. If they had asked, I would have said no. The kids got really upset and were like, "You're not going to pay us for our work?" But again, I didn't ask them to shovel my driveway. They started yelling at me and I just kind of shut my door. Fast forward a couple of hours, their mom comes and knocks on the door. I open it and she started screaming at me for not paying their kids. Her points were: it's only $60 and clearly not going to break me, not wrong. They put in the work and should be paid. Her boys did a nice thing for me. She was proud of her boys for using their snow day to help people, and I was being really ungrateful and going to make them turn to drugs next time. This is where I started to get kind of mad. I said that I never asked for their services, and it was nice that they shoveled my driveway, but I never agreed to pay them and they really should have asked first. She insisted I pay them this time and they'll ask in the future. But I don't want to reinforce bad behavior. Just because they're children and people feel the need to let them get away with whatever, this is just not a cycle I want to perpetuate for these kids. You can't manipulate people into paying you for something they never asked for. Ick, so far I've refused to pay and I'm now getting torched on Nextdoor for being a heartless monster who took advantage of children. Edit to add, a few people don't believe that I did not hear them shoveling. That's a fair thing to be suspicious of. So we did get 14 inches, but my husband and I shoveled yesterday. I'm not sure how much we shoveled versus what was left, but these kids did not shovel 14 inches on their own. My home office is in the far back of our house, overlooking the backyard. It's the furthest back you can get and still be inside. And 90% of the time I have headphones in for meetings or music. So I really didn't hear them. Other question is my driveway length. It's a 2-car wide driveway, and it's probably 2 cars long. It's pretty standard, so I also felt like $60 was outrageous. Yeah, no. Don't pay them a dime. They should have knocked and asked first. And the mother encouraging their behaviors is just disgusting. Tell the mother she should have the children ask first, before performing a service. Then charge her $100 for that bit of common sense. You're not wrong. My son goes out on, very rare in TN, snow days and shovels for the neighbors. If they offer to pay him, he won't accept because the people he shovels for are elderly or disabled. Our neighborhood is full of elderly people, so I taught him early we have to watch out and help our neighbors, not for money but because that's what good neighbors do. I would appalled if my son shoveled someone's driveway and walkway without talking to them and then demanding payment. He was raised better than that. Shame on the mom for doing that and putting you in such an awkward and uncomfortable situation. Paying them will teach them the wrong lesson. Not paying them will teach them that you negotiate terms before doing the work. Valuable lesson. Not in the wrong. This is the kid equivalent of random people walking up to cars stopped in traffic, washing their windshields, and then demanding payment. Or getting up early one Saturday to mow this entitled lady's lawn, then demanding $100 for it. If you give in to extortion, it will never stop. Next time someone tries this stunt, you should be like, "You went without permission and ruined my hobby." I love cleaning snow of my doorway and now I can't. You guys should pay me. As soon as they start with "that doesn't make any sense," you could go with "neither does doing work" without talking to the unwilling client, and yet here we are, and close the door on their faces. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.